In the filmography of Sandra Bullock, there's a particular movie that this weekend of college football makes me think of, and that's Miss Congeniality. In that movie, they talk about what the perfect date is. And that particular date, according to that movie, is April 25th. Well, for me, and hopefully all of you college football fans out there, it is the second weekend of October that is the perfect date across anything. We'll talk about it. My name is Ed Smith, and this is Total Sports Talk Beyond the Lights. What's up, everybody? This is Ed Smith. I am your host this evening for Total Sports Talk Beyond the Lights. My co hosts Matthew and David are off with their families this weekend, and we hope they're having a great time. But let's dive into it. I can smell the corn dogs from here. I can hear the Ferris wheel running. I can hear Big Tex calling our names from the Texas State Fair. Because why? It is Red River Shootout weekend. It is Texas and Oklahoma. Obviously, something that's near and dear to my heart because I have been a part of this weekend my entire life. And I can't think of a better college football game on the calendar to look forward to every year. But that's just my humble opinion. Now, this is going to be a very clear day. It is going to be warm. This is really actually good football weather for two teams that are in a hotter area. So, no, weather's not going to be a factor in all of this, but but what will be a factor is the fact that we have two teams that hate each other. It is rising pain. Now, of course, the players on the teams, they don't really hate each other as much as the fans do. That's just how being a fan works. But what we are seeing for this game and the expectation for this game, at least by Vegas standards, is that Texas is just going to walk in, roll their helmets out, and just walk all over Oklahoma. I don't think that's necessarily going to be true because this is such a rivalry that it is the anomaly that we get more than two touchdowns difference between these two teams, not the norm. A game like last year, that is the norm. It was very exciting. It was a four-quarter game. It was a 59-minute game as Oklahoma pulled out the victory last year. Texas coming in with a bit of a chip on their shoulder after that one. Yes, Texas made the playoffs, but Oklahoma kind of stole that thunder a little bit in the early part of the season and put their backs against the wall for Texas to go the rest of the way. Oklahoma, they are uh, they've only lost one game so far this year. They feel like they are ready to play the spoiler in this. The only loss that they had was against Tennessee. It was at home. It was a very ugly game. It was a very Brent Venables game. It was a game in which Brent Venables was able to muck it up somewhat with his schemes and his plans and all those things. But Tennessee was just superior that night and showed it. And Tennessee walked out of there. But that's already one team named UT that Oklahoma's lost to this year. They don't want to lose to another one. It is deep in their soul not to lose to another UT in the same year. So they are definitely going to come in just aching to get over that and to show the world that they are not the throw-in when it came to realignment for the SEC. They are the real deal. Now, Texas has a higher profile. That Texas did do the playoff last year. just all the momentum has been down in Austin, and Norman has been somewhat kind of disrespected in that sense. But believe you me, Oklahoma is a top flight program that the SEC does have to contend with going forward. Auburn found that out a couple of weeks ago when they went down to the Plains, and I came out with the victory there. But coming into this game, there have been some question marks, especially at the QB position for both teams. Yes, Texas has one of the most rock solid QB rooms in the country with Quinn Ewers and Arch Manning. Well, Arch Manning started the last two games because of Quinn Ewers had yet another injury. Now, everybody in Texas's circles know that Quinn Ewers could have played 2 weeks ago against Mississippi State, but felt Arch gave them an opportunity to let Quinn rest and get ready for this game here. Because from here going into next week against Georgia and the rest of that schedule, which suddenly, with all the upsets that have occurred in the SEC, makes a much tougher schedule the rest of the way. Let's get Quinn some rest. Let's get him prepared for this game moving forward to the end of that schedule. On Oklahoma's side, they are starting their freshman. The Jackson Arnold experiment is over. They're moving on. They are taking the chance on the freshman QB going into this game. That brings up a question for me in that last year you had Dylan Gabriel, which who we'll talk about later. He had the moxie and the experience and the calmness in such a raucous environment to lead Oklahoma to victory after being down. Texas had stormed back. They had the lead, and Oklahoma was able to find their way down to the end zone and take the game last year. A freshman quarterback, redshirt or not, they don't have that same kind of moxie. Dylan Raiola, he at Nebraska, he's got all the talent in the world, but he has not faced that situation to know what to expect and how to control his nerves in that situation like an experienced quarterback would. That is definitely check mark for Texas's side. Sark and the Longhorns, they have been tested by being away from Austin to play a big game. Now, granted, Michigan has proven not to be the same caliber that they were last year when they won the national title, but that is still a difficult game to go to Ann Arbor, the second game of the season when you're not really sure of yourself, and get in there and just dominate the way that you did. There have been talks about, is Michigan even worth saying was a tough game for Texas? I think so, because it isn't like Michigan fell off the face of the earth. They just lost so much off of that previous team that Texas going in there is still a quality win. On Oklahoma's side, they had the chance to get a quality win against Tennessee. They weren't able to pull that out. And when you take a look at the rest of the teams that Oklahoma has played, they don't have much of a pulse. So we really have a hard time figuring out what are they at this point. Yes, Brent Venables is a defensive-minded coach. He wants to muck it up and be that. Well, Sark is an offensive-minded coach. So this really plays into the hands of, the irresistible force versus the immovable object. But it's the flip of that I think is going to turn this game. I do see that the Texas defense is going to be able to get after Oklahoma's offensive line, which we know has been suspect, and really get to the quarterback. Colin Simmons, a true freshman, already has 6 sacks on the year. And that's just on passing down rotation for that defensive line. You don't think he's going to be able to get to Oklahoma through that offensive line? I think he will be able to do that at least twice during this game, and that's going to force that clock in the head of Oklahoma's quarterback. Forgive me, the name keeps escaping me. It's going to force that clock to get a little faster, and that's when the linebackers in the secondary of the Longhorns are going to take advantage, especially considering the fact that the top 5 receivers for Oklahoma are all out with injury. This is There's so much that is leaning Texas's way on paper, but like I said before, this type of rivalry game, something that is considered a blowout, is not the norm. It is an anomaly, which a couple of years ago Texas had the anomaly of a 49 to nothing win. Oklahoma comes back last year, they win, and it's that closer game. I've seen close, I've seen just complete dismantling of teams during this game. I think the line is about right, but I don't think it's going to be in a situation where it is so overblown that Oklahoma just tucks their tail between their legs and just rides the wagon back to Norman, and that's it. Uh, Now, for Oklahoma's defensive side, they can get in the backfield. What does Texas do well? They protect the quarterback, and especially in big games. If you can't get to Quinn Ewers in this game, you're not going to win. So that's going to be a big thing to take a look at as we go into this game. Will Brent Venables be able to scheme up something to get pressure on Quinn Ewers, get him on the ground, get his jersey dirty in the Cotton Bowl turf? Because if he can't, this game will definitely be on Texas's side. And at this point, I'm going to give a prediction. Yet, yes, Texas is going to win this, just like most everybody is expecting. It is going to be closer to that spread that Vegas has put out. I'm thinking it's only going to be about 13 points. Not so. Uh, so take Oklahoma with the points, if you will. Somewhere in the vicinity of 31 to uh, 20. You're, I think that's a safe score to go off of, but I'm not a Vegas guy. I'm just giving you my prediction on that one. If you have any different thoughts on that, please feel free to drop it in the comments and let me know what you're thinking on that. Any other stats that you want to just refer to, uh, and just let us know so we can compare notes at the end of it. Now, the next game that I wanted to talk about at this time is the Ohio State and Oregon Ducks. They're going. Ohio State is going to Autzen Stadium in Eugene, Oregon. They are favored by 3 for some reason. I can't quite understand why. But what we've seen from Ohio State is that $20 million roster is paying dividends. They are undefeated going into this. Oregon's undefeated going into this. They haven't looked nearly as impressive, but they did play Boise State, which is expected to be the group of 5 playoff contender. They played Oregon State, which they're a little bit in flux after last year with Jonathan Smith leaving and that situation there. Oregon is looking better going into the last 3 weeks than they did the first 2, and getting Ohio State maybe a little thinking a little big of themselves going into this game. This is going to be a difficult one that I don't think Ohio State thinks that they're ready for. Yes, Autzen Stadium only houses about 55, 60,000 people, whereas Ohio State is over 100, so they think it's a smaller stadium. It's actually a very difficult place to play, and Will Howard is certainly going to learn that very quickly. He's not going to be able to get his signals out. He's going to have to be able to communicate in a very specific way to drown out the crowd noise that he's going to encounter there. Uh, Ryan Day and Chip Kelly, they are going to have a great game plan for Will Howard to execute in Oregon. It's going to be a matter of will, uh, will, if that's a thing, will be able to uh, execute that game plan before Oregon gets in the backfield. Uh, if Oregon confuses him with the different looks and the different schemes that Dan Lanning puts on the field, that's a thing. And for the flip side, when you got Dylan Gabriel, previous quarterback for Oklahoma, I told you we'd talk about him. He has been completing 77% of his passes. It may not have looked as impressive as when Bo Nix did it last year, but he has gotten the ball to his receivers. He has gotten the ball quickly out of harm's way. He's only given up 3 interceptions to 11 touchdowns so far. He's executing this offense well. The flip side is I thought this was a typo when I first looked at it. Ohio State already has 38 tackles for loss on the year. That is a great number for this team. Now, granted, that non-conference schedule, we can always look at it and go, but who did they play? You still got to play the team that's in front of you, and it's still impressive to be that on top of it defensively to be able to get to the quarterback that well. Now, as far as holding opponents, Ohio State defensively, they've done very well at keeping a very low passer rating. They've done fairly well in keeping the number of runs down for their opposition. They've done fairly well for yards per game, giving up less than 300 yards a game. But guess what? Oregon has only given up 200 yards a game. Oregon has only given up uh, uh, 31 rushes a game. They've only given up 130 passing yards per game. Uh, they they actually have the number 1 sack rate. So Will Howard may be running around a little bit if his offensive line cannot keep up with the speed and the physicality that they're not expecting from Oregon. Yes, everything's on tape. They're going to be able to decipher what Oregon is trying to do to them. But when you see it in action, Oregon is actually very good on the defensive front. They are going to be able to get to Will Howard at some point, maybe speed him up, maybe see if he can throw a lame duck pass out there. You know, Dylan Gabriel is going to have a little bit lighter, deep ball throw because he doesn't have the arm strength that Will Howard does, but he is going to be accurate. Will Howard, maybe not as accurate, but he can run and he can throw the deep ball a little bit better. So I'm really conflicted with this game because this game is two of the best teams in the country. It's so minute between the two that it's difficult to say that 3 points is even enough for a point spread on this. We're going to, because I think we are going to see a game in which it's going to come down to a last second field goal to win it. Which team actually has it? That's going to be the question. I think it's actually going to be Oregon that comes out on this, and we're going to see 24-23 is what I'm expecting. just eking out the victory over Ohio State, announcing to the Big Ten that they are in the Big Ten now. This isn't the Pac 12, and they can play a style of ball that competes at the highest level and the second highest conference that's in college football. Now, the last game I wanted to talk about this evening is Mississippi Ole Miss at LSU. Who needs this win more? Is it Lane Kiffin? Is it Brian Kelly? That's the big question going into this. I happen to think it's Brian Kelly because Lane Kiffin, it doesn't matter what he does, he's not going anywhere unless he tries to escape in the middle of the night. But Brian Kelly left Notre Dame of all jobs to come coach LSU. He has not fulfilled the promise of championship football. Yes, he has a Heisman Trophy winner under his belt from last year, but that is not what the fans of LSU expect. They expect a championship at some point of every coach's tenure down in Baton Rouge. And Brian Kelly just doesn't seem to be able to get over that hump to create the opportunity of a championship. Now, before that was in, to be fair, before that was in divisional play. The SEC doesn't have divisions now. So that's something to take in account because keep in mind, LSU's only loss is game one against USC at a neutral site. So they have an opportunity to go through the SEC schedule, not have to play the complete gauntlet of what the SEC West used to be, and still have an opportunity to be in that upper echelon of teams vying for the spot in the SEC championship game at the end of the season. Now, on the flip side, Ole Miss, they stubbed their toe a couple of weeks ago. No doubt about it. But they did come back and won by 24 against South Carolina. That is a response. But you know what else we didn't see in that week leading up to that game? We did not see Lane Kiffin in the press talking smack about other programs or anything. We didn't see Lane Kiffin talking smack about LSU or anybody else this week. So that tells me that he is in the lab doing this thing, getting ready for this game, and there is a good possibility that LSU is going to see a couple of wrinkles in that offense with Jackson Dart that they were not ready for, and that's going to throw the whole thing off for Brian Kelly. Yes, LSU is only giving up 9 points a game. Yes, LSU is only giving up 25% in third down conversions. Yes, LSU is only giving up 57% red zone scoring opportunities. But on the flip side, Ole Miss is scoring 91% of red zone opportunities. They are able to get points on the board when they have the opportunity, and it's going to take everything of Nussmeier and company to keep up with what Jackson Dart and Lane Kiffin are putting on the field. That is where I see this game going at this point. Is it's going to be all about the offenses, not necessarily the defenses. You're going to see Chris Durham. Durham for LSU. He's going to be carrying the ball well. Parrish, he has really showed out on the offensive side for Ole Miss. There is a lot of firepower if they are focused. And what have we seen the past few years with Ole Miss? There's a game or two in which they are not focused. I think we've passed that point already in the season because now they're like, oh, well, we have no room for error. And we have games like Georgia coming to our house coming up they know that they have to be super locked in right now. And I think Ole Miss does come away with this game at this point. Uh, just so many things pointing uh, pointing in that direction. Because also keep in mind, Ole Miss has an upgraded defense that is getting after the quarterback. They are attacking the line of scrimmage, and Nussmeier, as good as he's has been a little inconsistent as far as uh, being accurate down the field from what I've seen, and that can lead to some issues that will pin LSU's defense against a wall that I don't think that they're going to be able to hold up. So what I'm expecting out of this game, yes, uh, Ole Miss is going in as a 3.5 point favorite. I think they beat that. I think they beat it by a touchdown or more. So uh, that that will give Ole Miss that kickstart, starting with South Carolina last week, going into Ole Miss, going into the rest of their schedule. They're going to be a player going into the rest of this season, and by beating LSU, I'm going to I, I'm going to assume somewhere in the neighborhood of 33 to 24. That's that's kind of what I'm expecting out of this game. Once again, uh, I'm not a Vegas guy, and odds will change. But when I see the execution on uh, Ole Miss's side versus the execution I've seen on LSU's side, there's no reason I can't uh, pick Ole Miss in this game. Also, just to keep in mind, if you're looking at betting trends, Ole Miss, every game that they've won, they have beat their spread. So that those are all games in which they were locked in. Kentucky came in, beat them up front, beat them up, and came out with the win. That's the only game then that Ole Miss has missed on the betting line. So that's part of the reason why I say that Ole Miss will beat the LSU line and win by 9 points. And once again, if there are any questions uh, that that you have out there or comments about any of the predictions I've made this evening, please feel free to let me know. We just wanted to go through and highlight the top 3 games of the weekend. Now let's get ready for some football. And until next time we talk, friends, we are rounding third and we are headed for home.